Before starting this video, I do want to give a shout out to my patrons that support the channel. And if you'd like to support the channel, there are some great benefits for you if you want to look at the Patreon link down below. So with that out of the way, let's get into this week's video. What's going on YouTube? This is Devin coming back at you with another video today on Pub Stomp MTG. Glad to have you here. I am so excited for Tom Bombadil to make his debut into the Magic the Gathering universe. It was unfortunate not to see him in the movie series, but I feel like that's okay because they were going more for a serious take and they couldn't really introduce Tom Bombadil in that way specifically. But we have a 5-color commander right here. He's a legendary creature, God Bard. It's still debatable if he's like God status. I mean, he's kind of an out of there character in the books, but I mean, I'm not going to dive into that too much. I'm going to go over the card right here. So he does read, as long as there are 4 or more lore counters among sagas you control, Tom Bombadil has hexproof and indestructible, and his bottom text states, whenever the final chapter ability of a saga you control resolves, reveal the cards from the top of your library until you reveal a saga card. Put that card onto the battlefield and the rest on the bottom of your library in a random order. This ability only triggers once each turn. So if you're not familiar with Tom Bombadil, he's definitely all about singing a bunch of different type of songs here and there and talking about himself too as well, so Sagas is a very fitting theme for him. So let's first dive into some songs or some sagas you want to include into your deck. There's going to be a lot of different sagas to choose from now more than ever from the past couple years, putting sagas left and right into different sets right here. So I'm going to go over some of my personal favorites. I'm not going to go over all of them. So for example, because we are in a 5-color deck, I love the Kami War right here. This does have some great lore counters, essentially exiling anything on the board that's a non-land permanent. On the second ability, it also is a great bounce spell, and then each opponent will have to discard a card on top of that, and then you'll flip it to the backside, which is a big giant dragon. Honestly, just a fantastic include, providing a body, getting some removal here and there. Honestly, great card to add in this list, my favorite one personally. I also like Fable of the Mirror Breaker and Reflection of Kiki Jiki. I know this is really popular in Standard and in other formats like that, but it's actually just great utility overall in here because we can make a body that when it attacks, you can make a treasure token. Also, you can discard up to 2 cards, then draw that many cards. And you also make a mini Kiki Jiki on the backside. You do have to pay into that, so it's a little more fair. Honestly, this card provides such great utility as well, but also we do want to include the Cruelty of Gix. This is a 5-cost saga right here, but it does have great abilities right here. You could actually read ahead. You could pick whichever lore counter you want to start with. This does have a lot of things going for it. I don't really care for that first ability, but I do like that ability to search your library for a card and putting it into your hand. You're going to lose some life in the process, but that's not a big deal. Also, that third ability is pretty brutal, essentially being a reanimate. You can reanimate one of your own creatures, but you could also reanimate one of your opponent's big dumb creatures as well if you need to. But we do also have a great removal spell with Binding the Old Gods. I love this card a lot, mainly for that first ability, destroying a target non-land permanent an opponent controls. That's super critical in here. Also on top of that, ramping ahead with that second ability is great. You're not really going to worry about that third ability so much, so I honestly like this for a great utility piece. But if you do want to get a big Kraken on the board, Kiora Best the Sea God is a perfect example of that. For its first ability, when it enters the battlefield, you create an 8/8 blue Kraken creature token with hexproof. Absolutely crazy. That second ability is actually really good too. You could tap all non-land permanents target opponent controls. But that last one is pretty brutal as well. You could gain control of target permanent and opponent controls, and you could untap it, so it could be an artifact, enchantment, creature, or even a land. The possibilities are endless with this one, and that's why I do really like it as well. Again, I don't want to mention too many sagas because you can honestly play any type of good stuff saga you want because honestly there's too many options to even count. Because sagas are enchantments, we could get some great benefits out of those. We can go into a little bit of an Enchantress theme, or enchantment theme I should say, but what's really great about a lot of these different cards is they'll get you extra value as long as you keep playing your sagas. So a lot of different cards like Sithis, Harvest Hand, Enchantress Presence, and Setestan Champion will all provide you card draw whenever you cast an enchantment spell. So this is just great value right here. That's really just simple, and you're just going to be drawing so much cards off of these different options. I did also want to mention some other enchantresses like Mesa Enchantress, Argothian Enchantress, and Eidolon of Blossoms. I would personally say Eidolon of Blossoms is actually the best one out of all these cards right here. The biggest reason why is we're going to be running a little bit of a blink theme in this deck tech right here. You're going to see in a little bit that we have a lot of different blink options as well when we blink our Sagas. However, the other Enchantresses only see you as casting the enchantment spell. Eidolon Blossoms wants you to have them enter the battlefield so that you could draw some cards. Also, another way of getting value out of our enchantments is Sigil of the Empty Throne. We'll make some 4/4 White Angel creature tokens with flying on the battlefield when we're casting enchantment spells. So of course that's going to provide us a lot of value right there, so we can make some bodies to protect ourselves or that we could swing in for damage. However, if we really need to protect our enchantments, Sterling Grove is absolutely perfect in here just for 2 mana. Other enchantments you control have Shroud. This also acts as a great tutor, searching your library for an enchantment and putting on top of your library. What's very interesting about Tom Bombadil's ability right there, whenever a final chapter ability from a Saga you control resolves, reveal the top cards of your library until you reveal a Saga card, and you can put it directly onto play. So you can search your library for something, or you can use some top deck manipulation so that you put a Saga on top of your library so that you can play it right away like Kiora the Best the Sea God. That's absolutely incredible value right there. We do also want to make sure we have great utility for our Sagas or our other enchantments as well. What I kind of mean by that, we want to have some great value engines for our deck. So for example, I did think of Hall of Heliod's Generosity. Whenever a Saga is going to be going to our graveyard, we could put it on top of our library. So if we do want to reuse it from Tom Bombadil's ability, we can, or we could just put it on top of our library to cast it later. Because of a lot of our Sagas having lore counters, we can manipulate it by having something like Nesting Grounds or Scholar of New Horizons, essentially moving them around here and there with Nesting Grounds. And if you want to remove them completely so that your Sagas still stay online, Scholar of New Horizons is great and provides great value so you can search your library for a Plains card. However, if you want to make sure you can put more lore counters onto your Sagas, we do have Satsuki, the Living Lore. For 2 mana, we have a legendary creature, Human Druid. You can put a lore counter on each Saga you control, activate only as a sorcerer. You could tap that and activate that ability. And also on top of that, if she does die, we have some great utility putting a Saga to our hand essentially. Also, because a lot of Sagas are going to the graveyard, we can recur them with Gen Arcanum Weaver. We could sacrifice another useless enchantment so that we could return a bigger enchantment onto the battlefield, like one of our big spells, like Kiora the Best the Sea God, just for example, but honestly a good card in here just to recur your enchantments continuously. I did mention recently that I was going into a little bit of a flicker theme. The biggest reason why I wanted to go into that blink theme is so that we could recur our Sagas, so there's many different ways we could do that. So the first one I thought about was Cosmic Intervention, because a lot of our Sagas are going to go to the graveyard. We could cast this at instant speed, then we could exile those permanents, and later on we could return it back onto the battlefield at the beginning of the next end step, and it does have a foretell ability. Honestly, this card is so criminally underrated. You could use this with fetch lands. They'll go into exile instead and then go back onto the battlefield. There's so many different variations where you could use this ability, but we're going to be using this with Sagas specifically. Honestly, such a great card. Another card I did want to mention was Brago, King Eternal. For 4 mana, you are essentially, whenever you're dealing combat damage to a player, you could exile any number of target online permanents you control, which will be your Sagas. Then you could reset them later onto the battlefield, reusing their abilities. We do also have the Sky Noodle himself, Yorion Sky Nomad. This is an excellent include in here. Essentially, when it enters the battlefield, you can flicker your cards as well. Honestly, a great include in here as well. We can also recur our Sagas from the graveyard to the battlefield in many different ways. For example, I thought of Dance of the Manse. So it essentially reads, return up to X target artifact and or non-aura enchantment cards, each with converted mana cost X or less from your graveyard to the battlefield. If X is 6 or more, those permanents are 4/4 creatures in addition to their other types. So obviously the more mana you pay into this, the bigger it gets and the bigger threats you will have onto the board. All of your Sagas will become 4/4 creatures in addition to their other types. So this is definitely a great card in here, no question about it. I also thought of another card. It is high CMC, but it is worth it. We do have Triumphant Reckoning for 9 mana. Return all artifact, enchantment, and planeswalker cards from your graveyard to the battlefield. All of them, not just one of each. All of them. We're going to have a lot of different things coming to the battlefield, especially our Saga enchantments. But if we just wanted to focus on our enchantments, we do have Brilliant Restoration for 7 mana. We do have that ability of returning all artifact and enchantment cards from your graveyard to the battlefield as well. Same as the other one right here, but again, it's only focusing on artifact and enchantments. So again, if you have a lot of Sagas in your graveyard, the better these cards get right here. However, that's going to do it for me, guys. Thank you guys so much for coming by and watching this video on Tom Bombadil. I think this is a very funny card, dealing with a lot of different Sagas right here. I feel like it's the perfect Saga commander for a 5-color deck. I'm honestly glad that Magic is taking inspiration from the book instead of the movies. I mean, I love the movies a lot, but I am glad to see some other characters like Tom Bombadil make it into a card. He is definitely one of those crazy characters where he actually put on the One Ring in the story and it did not affect him at all. No invisibility. He was not even tempted by it. He just put it on and just like, okay, I'm taking it off. I'm not going to talk about him too much. He's a very fun character in the books. If you haven't read the books, definitely go read it. But let me know down below in the comments, did they do justice for Tom Bombadil? I mean, making him a god is pretty a big step up right there, but let me know again down below in the comments, what do you think about him? Make sure to like, share, and subscribe to the channel. And with that out of the way, thank you for stopping by.